Hello, friends. I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's fantastic. Everything here is great. Um, so, related to workshop stuff, I've been using sriracha bottles for a while now for my glue, and I absolutely hate them. They're not good glue bottles. I used to use these condiment bottles, but I don't like this top. I don't like the way the cap gets stuck on things. And for the same reason, I don't like the glue bot bottles, and I don't like caps that are removable because then I lose them. But I have decided to go back to these because the sriracha bottles, for one, they kind of crush and never recover. Two, the nozzles, not the nozzle, this part gets clogged, but in the internal structure gets clogged. They're just really frustrating. I don't know why I have allowed them to frustrate me for all this time. So I'm getting rid of them. Going back to the old bottles. That's beside the point. Today I wanted to talk about something somebody said this week. I had a comment from a new, somebody who recently found the channel. I don't remember the person's name. Let's go Dutch. Dutch said, I came across your channel and it's really charming. Would you ever do a video just explaining about yourself and your history, like your time in the Marines, etc.? I'm really interested. I hope you're well. I think for most of you, the majority of you who watch these videos have been here for a long time. Like, let's be honest. I have like 10 people, 10 friends, 10, 20 friends who watch every episode, and they have for years. And so for you, you've heard all of those stories. And so I try to come up with something different or new or whatever every day. And I have retold stories because I forget that I've told them in the past. But I try not to. And Dutch, if you're watching, I'm not doing that today, but I want to talk about that. So I've told these stories a lot of my life. I've told people about my time in the Marines. I've told people about things that I saw in the Marine Corps. I've told people about my time as a car salesman and my time as a service department manager, as a parts department manager, as a technician, an IT person. Like, I've talked about my kids. I've talked about getting divorced. I've told like the big life stories a lot. A lot. And that's fine. I think people tell stories that are important to them to people that are important to them. And, you guys being important to me means you've heard those stories. But for a completely unrelated reason, a reason I'm not ready to talk about yet, maybe I will in the future, I've been trying to catalog some of these memories just for my own sanity, right? To try to say, all right, what is the real version of this? Because I've started to wonder, how much of my past is real. And I don't mean like I made shit up and it's stuck with me all this time. I mean like when I have a conversation with somebody who was with me in my past, often our versions of the events are different. Sometimes very different. Sometimes they're like, wait, did we experience the same thing? Like, were you even there? And that's really confusing and weird. So I have been trying to find a way to retell myself some of these stories. And going through that process. So maybe this started when recently Em and I started cleaning out the basement again. Like, this seems to be a reoccurring thing, a purge type of thing. And every year or two or so, I'm willing to relinquish more of my, quote, keepsakes that for some reason just keep lingering. Like this time, I found a tote that had T-shirts in it. So I used to play the Star Wars trading card game and then the Lord of the Rings. Both were made by Decipher, and if you won tournaments for those games, or you placed, I think maybe first, second, and third sort of thing, you got T-shirts, and on the T-shirt will be printed one of the cards from the game. So I found T-shirts printed with the One Ring because I won multiple tournaments playing that game. I was actually really good at that game. Why do I've never worn those shirts. They have absolutely no intrinsic value. Nobody gives a crap about that. Why, at 43 or whatever I am right now, I haven't played that game in at least 20 years. I don't think the game has existed in 20 years. Why did I hold on to those all this time? I don't know. I found figurines of characters from my past, like weird things that are just like, why am I holding on to this? This doesn't mean anything to me. Let's let it go. Well, in that process, I found a few things that were like, I found some of my Marine Corps stuff, particularly since Dutch asked about the Marine Corps stuff. I found books. When you go through boot camp, they give well, they don't give you, you're forced to have these books that are like, history of the Marine Corps, uh, combat maneuvers, and you take actual sit-down classroom study classes, study courses on this material. And I kept those, and I thought maybe they would be interesting to somebody someday. Why? I have no idea. I don't know why anybody would find it interesting. It's not like it's riveting reading or anything like that. But it's something that I thought, well, I'm going to hold on to this because maybe somebody will think it's important. Or somebody will find it interesting. And in that same sort of thought, in that same vein, while going through that, I discovered, well, I knew it was there, but I have a book that my uncle gave me that was his grandfather's. I think it was his grandfather's. And it was from like World War One. It was a manual on horse-drawn artillery. Like, literally, they strapped, artillery cannons to horses, like carts, and they carted these horses off. And it was care of military horses and how to use these horses effectively. And it's a fascinating book. And so I think part of me kept my Marine Corps books because I thought maybe someday somebody would look at that material and go, wow, this is really interesting. But the difference is, you can just go look that stuff up. Like, it's not like the things that I have are unique to me, right? They're not special in any way, shape, or form. They're just the standard issue Marine Corps books. We weren't allowed to write in them. Like, you couldn't really take notes, so it's not like there's personalization in there at all. It's just books I carried in boot camp. Whereas this World War One book is really like a piece of history that's not easy to find. You don't just go out to the internet and read it. And so while I was going through all of that and reminiscing about my time in the Marine Corps, I started to retell myself the story of how I joined the Marines. And for those of you who've never heard the story, it essentially comes down to, I was a bit of a crap kid. I wasn't great. I wasn't terrible. I wasn't like a problem child, but I almost failed out of high school. I wasn't a good person. And at that point in time, I was really like, anarchistic. I thought that the government was a joke, and damn the man and all that sort of stuff. And so when a recruiter called me, he called me because my brother-in-law was in the Marines, and my brother-in-law listed me as a potential on his application. And you have to do that when you fill it out. They ask you, who can we talk to? So the recruiter calls me, and I'm like, yeah, whatever, come on over, you're right. And he does, and he gives me his little spiel. They go through the whole program of like, pick 3 things that you find, or 5 things that interest you, and they try to find you a job, and they tell you about how they can help you with your career and all this stuff. It's all BS, by the way. And so through that process, I sat through that process the whole time like a smug little jackass, thinking like, yeah, buddy, I'm not joining the Marines. I'm just wasting your time. Like, I did it literally as a laugh. Like, I'm just going to waste this guy's time because there's no way I'm going to join the Marine Corps or whatever. And he leaves my house, and my mom looks at me. I was 17, so this was the summer before my senior year in high school is when I talked to him. And my mom says to me, are you actually going to join the Marine Corps or whatever? And I was like, no. Like, this was just, whatever. And as she spoke to me, she said something to the effect of, that's good, I think. It was something like that. But the phrase that really stuck in my mind was, you'd never make it anyway. And that is the reason why that tiny phrase, that's the reason. That's why I joined the Marine Corps. It was literally for spite. It was to spite my mother. It was to show her that I wasn't the piece of garbage she thought I was. It was to, I don't know what. It was also, so anyway, that's the story that I've told. It's the truth. that did happen, and that in that moment, that was the reason why I joined the Marine Corps. But the reality is, generally something more. And in this particular case, looking back on this memory, I think I also knew that I was a piece of garbage, and that I knew that I wasn't college material. I knew that I had nothing going for me. And so maybe this was my escape. Maybe if I could figure out a way to do this thing, which I was an extremely unphysical kid. Like, in the Marine Corps, bare minimum, you have to be able to do 3 pull-ups. I couldn't even do 1. I couldn't do 3 for most of my time in the Marine Corps. I faked it, or, just every year when you do the PT test, it was really tough for me to do. I couldn't do a single pull-up now if you begged me to. I've just never had that physicality. And, I thought maybe it was a way to envision myself, to become something that I wasn't. And at that time, I was very much not a person that I wanted to be. I was a person that I became because of bullying and harassment and a lack of personal freedom. And I thought, I can show all these people. I'll go recreate myself. And so retelling that story to myself, it's a very different story these days. I think the core is still the same, but I think my stories, I think I have found the meaning in my stories as I've grown older, whereas when I was younger, I maybe didn't fully understand myself. Like, I didn't understand what I was going through at that time, because I was unable to see it. I was unable to, or unwilling to believe it. I was unwilling to believe that I was not going anywhere in life, because I was convinced I was unstoppable, just like every 17-year-old. So, Dutch, I probably will revisit these stories at some point in the future. If there's specific stories that anybody wants to rehear or wants me to tell, I'm always open to suggestions. Jonathan asked a bunch of questions about shop stuff. You can ask me questions about life stuff. I really enjoy that stuff. And if we want to I would love to bring back the talk box. If somebody wants to call in and leave a voicemail, we can do call-in questions. I'm more than happy to do that sort of thing. So, thank you all for being here. Thank you, as always, for being amazing people and wonderful friends, and I very much appreciate you. This is not the normal ending. I will see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is per capita. It is an adjective meaning per person pertaining to a single individual. We find it satisfying to mull over the fact that the per capita income among our social contacts is greater than that of many countries. Per capita. PER space CAPITA. Yeah, this book is definitely written from the pretension that they are richer than everybody. And cool, I guess.